All right, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm going to hop right into the presentation and we'll get started talking about HubSpot migrations. Okay. Sorry about that, slow tech. Let's go. Okay, here we go. All right, thank you everyone for joining us on the 7 Steps to Successful Migration webinar. We're going to be chatting about all of the important steps for migrating to HubSpot, a quick guide on simplifying that really complex process down into 7 steps. So I'm going to pass it off to Diana to get started with some introductions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Erica. So let's move on to the next slide where we're going to go over the high-level agenda for today. I think we skipped the agenda slide.
It is not wanting to move very quickly.
All right, while we wait for that, I'll just do a quick intro on your speakers for today. So of course, there's myself. My name is Diana. I'm a senior account manager here at Flawless Inbound. I work with clients to implement HubSpot solutions, whether that be for Sales Hub, Marketing Hub, or Service Hub. And a lot of that does involve migrating from their current legacy systems into HubSpot, which is exactly what we'll be covering today. And I also assist Erica with the internal marketing for Flawless Inbound. So now I'll let Erica introduce herself.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Erica. I am the marketing manager at Flawless Inbound. I do all of the marketing for the HubSpot side of our company, and I also have been a HubSpot user for just over 7 years now, I believe, and I have been a part of over 100 different migrations into HubSpot during my time here at Flawless as both a marketing professional and a CRM strategist as well. So I've definitely completed this task many times, including personally for our own CRM. So I am, I think I have been able to distill it down into the 7 most essential steps, which we're going to be sharing with you today. I can get my slides to progress. All right.
So just a quick introduction of Flawless Inbound, if this is the first time you're hearing of us. We are a subsidiary of GSI Inc., and we are a HubSpot Diamond Solution partner. As Erica has said, we've done many successful implementations, and we have over 60 certifications with over 250 implementation projects completed, and I would say probably 90% of those have included migrations as well. And we also hold some unique accreditations from HubSpot for onboarding and custom integrations. All right, so now to kick things off, I will pass it back to Erica.
Right, so you're planning to migrate to HubSpot, and whether this is a full migration, as in you are getting rid of your legacy system and you are pulling that into HubSpot, or you're just adding HubSpot into your tech stack, but you're going to need a bunch of your data to be transferred over, whatever the case is, or even if you're just trying to migrate a certain amount of data from an external system into a HubSpot system that already exists. We've had a lot of customers who have a bunch of data in a third-party system, even something like Sales Navigator or ZoomInfo that they want to pull in to HubSpot and they haven't been able to do that. This is going to apply to you as well. So a couple of reasons that most people want to do a migration. The first is that they are experiencing a legacy system failure. So their existing CRM or marketing automation or sales tool is no longer functioning in an effective way for their company. and they need something that is more modern, more full featured, that's going to be able to serve their current needs more so than the legacy system is able to do. The second one is new features. HubSpot has a ton of different features and integrations that some other CRMs just aren't able to provide. And so a lot of people want to migrate into HubSpot because they want to access those new features. And then lastly, scalability. People want to migrate from one CRM to another one because the new CRM is able to scale with their business as it grows. So a lot of people end up migrating at the point when their business is starting to grow quite rapidly, and they need a system that's going to be able to keep up with that growth. But there are some really big challenges that we see most companies face when it comes to migration. The first one is being able to clean the data that they want to bring into HubSpot. This is a large effort, and it requires a lot of time and strategy to take data that might be out of date, that might be unclean, that might have errors, and then be able to clean that in order to pull it over successfully. This is a challenge that a lot of companies face, and we'll talk a little bit about how to get around that. System discrepancies, which means that the legacy system and HubSpot, or the legacy system and whatever new system you're migrating to, have different setups. They have different ways that they handle data. They even have different naming conventions, and this can be very confusing to companies who are not super experienced in migration. If you go from, for example, the NetSuite CRM, I know that they call companies accounts, and then in HubSpot they're called companies, and even just that can cause issues with migration and things if you have the naming conventions incorrect across your data. So that's something that we see people struggle with and that we'll address today. And then lastly, user adoption. So this is not just related to migrations, but change management and making sure that your team is willing and able to adopt the new system and the new processes that might come with it is a big challenge that people face whenever they start using a new system, regardless of whether that was part of a migration, just a new thing in the tech stack, whatever the case is. We want to make sure that the users are ready and able to adopt that system successfully, and you don't face a ton of pushback from your team, that they actually see the value in the new system. That's going to be very important. So now let's get into what you came for, the 7 steps to a successful HubSpot migration. The first few steps are actually going to be fairly high level, and we won't get into the really technical stuff until about step 4, because there's a lot of stuff that has to be done prior to that technical move of everything if you want to have a successful migration. So the first step is actually planning and decisions, and you would be surprised at how many companies just want to skip over this step and say, well, we know how our process works, so let's just move our stuff. But I spoke before about system discrepancies, and it's important to make sure that when you are planning your migration, you have planned the differences between your legacy CRM and HubSpot. Early planning and early stakeholder involvement is critical. So we want all of the stakeholders who are going to have a piece of this new system, whether that's the exec team who's going to be looking at reporting out of it, whether that is sales and marketing leaders who might be managing their team in it. We want all of those stakeholders to have involvement in making some of the early decisions, so that when the time comes that the new system is live, it's working the way that they want it to, and it's working in a way that they're happy with, so that we don't face any of that kind of pushback post-migration and post-launch. So we want the stakeholders to all work together to make a few critical decisions on how the new portal is going to be set up and how the data is going to transfer from one system to another. These are a few things that we have found require some critical decisions from the team prior to migration. And some of these are dependent on the hub that you have. So if you don't have Sales Hub, then pipelines is not going to be super relevant to you. But in general, we need to make some decisions on some settings. you would be surprised how many people are not able to agree on what their currency is going to be in their HubSpot, what their time zone is going to be set as in their HubSpot portal, even company name, things like that can cause some back and forth between stakeholders. So we want to go over all of these settings and make sure that we have determined exactly what our values are going to be in there. That includes your brand colors. All of that gets set up in HubSpot so that you can use it, your team can use it going forward. So we want to make sure we all agree on what those things are. Our life cycle stages and our buyer's journey, these are all programmed into HubSpot so that you can track your leads all the way through. So you want to make sure that you know how your leads progress from visitor to lead to opportunity to customer. What are those stages? When do they change? How do they change? Those things need to be agreed on so that they can be programmed into HubSpot so you can accurately track your teams and your roles. So which team members are you going to give access to the new system and with what permissions? This is a big item that needs to be decided before you just start adding users, because you want to make sure that people have the permissions that they need to do their job, but that they don't have permissions that are going to perhaps allow them to do things that you don't want them to be doing in the portal. We've also got 3 things here: workflows, pipelines, and automation. So this is basically just making sure that you're agreed on what things are going to be automated, how they're going to look. So what are your deal stages? Is there any automation? Are there any special requirements? If you're in marketing, what is your lead nurturing process? Are there any automated emails that you're sending? All those things should be agreed on and laid out in a planning document or somewhere before you start migrating or building those things. You want to know how customized you're going to get. So are you going to stick with the defaults that HubSpot offers for pipeline stages? You're going to stick with the defaults they offer for properties, or are you going to be customizing farther than that? And also, very importantly, are you going to be customizing farther or more in depth than your previous system was? Because if you're going to be upgrading or changing the way that things work from your old system to the new one, that's going to require more user training, more change management, and even more technical programming from your admin team. So you have to make sure that you've made some decisions on how much customization you're going to do. And lastly, your reporting and analytics. This is not just for generally in your portal, but you want to do some thinking about what does a successful migration look like. So you don't want to just say, oh, I need to report on how many deals I closed this year. When you're doing a migration, that's a project. That's a whole project in itself. It's like a whole department in itself from your sales team or your marketing team or your customer service team. You also have your migrations team, and you want to be able to report on what does a successful migration look like. So that could be based on time. That could be based on how well the system does after the portal is migrated. And it can also be based on user adoption. So some metrics that you have for there as well. So once you've made all of those decisions, the next thing that you need to do is to clean up your existing system. And this to me is a task that feels a little bit like laundry. So it's really tempting when you have a whole bunch of laundry out on the floor to just ignore it and go buy a new outfit at the store because the laundry is overwhelming. But if you take the time to clean up the data that you have in your previous system before you migrate it, I promise you are going to be thankful that you did so, because there is nothing worse than starting into a brand new system with messy data that is disorganized, that is incorrect, because your users are going to be, your team is going to be spending time trying to get to know the new system, trying to understand how to do their day-to-day processes in there. They're going to have a learning curve in HubSpot. So if you also have data in HubSpot that's no good, that's going to just be overwhelming for them, and it's going to prevent them from doing the job that they need to do accurately. So whether you're migrating your sales, your marketing, or your customer service data into HubSpot, even your website, cleaning up your current system first helps you to determine 2 things. First, that is, what are you going to move? So are there things in your old system that you don't want anymore, that are out of date, that you don't need anymore, that you don't even use? Don't move it. We don't need things in our new system in HubSpot that we're not using. So don't migrate anything that you're not using anymore. And secondly, the quality of the migrated data. So you also want to determine how good the information is. Don't migrate contacts with bounced email addresses into your new portal. Clean those up first, because there's no reason to have them. That you can't send them an email. They're not quality contacts. And you could also even, take all of your bounced contacts, pass them off to a BDR or a sales rep and have them have a look and see if they can find the real email address for that person somewhere online, maybe on LinkedIn, maybe on ZoomInfo, other third-party system. But you want to make sure that you go in with quality data. If you're migrating your sales hub and your deals into HubSpot, definitely make sure that all the deals are accurate in terms of the amount. So make sure you have correct prices and amounts set on your deals. The close dates are accurate, because you don't want to go in and try and start reporting in this brand new system where things are supposed to be better and all of the amounts are inaccurate. So it's going to be really important to make sure that that existing data is clean. I know this is a tempting step to skip and just pull everything over, but it is so worth it to make sure that the new system is organized and accurate in terms of data. So the next step is mapping. So the next thing that you need to do if your HubSpot portal is brand new, i.e. you're not moving into a HubSpot portal that already exists, because for sure in that case you need to do mapping. So maybe you've had a merger or an acquisition. In that case, mapping is even more critical. But if your HubSpot portal is brand new, you might not think you need to map anything. Just create what you need in HubSpot and just create what you had in the old system and start running from there. But just like any CRM, HubSpot has features that work in a particular way. So you need to make sure that you've prepared the data that you're migrating for those features. So here's a few specific things that you should consider when you are mapping. The first one is going to be properties. So HubSpot has default properties for some things. HubSpot has a property for industry that you can use on your contacts or your companies to track. It has a whole bunch of industries in it, and you can use that as you see fit. But if you have in your old system a different set of values for industry, then you need to map across how those values fit into HubSpot's default property if you're going to use that. If you're going to create a brand new property in HubSpot, then you need to map across how you are going to use the new one that you've created rather than the existing one, and make sure that you have a system in place to deal with not accidentally using HubSpot's default industry property. So you want to make sure that any information that you're pulling over is formatted for the property that or the field that you're pulling it over into. So that can mean if it's a number in HubSpot, you have to make sure it's a number in the old system. We have seen things where phone numbers have accidental letters in them, and that causes an issue with import because HubSpot's phone number property only allows numbers to be entered. And so you want to make sure that you have mapped the data across systems to have accurate information. The second thing is processes. So making sure that your sales process and your forecasting fits into the system that HubSpot has. And from marketing side, your lead nurturing. Is there anything in HubSpot that you need to change in order to fit your existing process? Or is there something you're going to change about your existing process to fit into HubSpot? Both of those things are considerations to make prior to doing a migration and making sure that you have mapped those processes across. So don't just think, oh, I'll just do my new process in HubSpot, but look into HubSpot, make sure that you know how it works, and make sure that you're able to show and train your team on exactly how that process is going to work once they are in the system. And the third thing is automations. Automations are very different across different CRM systems, different marketing automation systems, the way that automations are set up. This is a big item where we have found that there are changes to the way that these things can function from legacy systems into HubSpot, or from two different systems entirely, even if it's not HubSpot. Automations usually function quite differently. So it's really important to have a look at your existing automations. Anything that happens by itself, that includes automated email sending, automated notifications, automated tasks for your team, and make sure that you can actually see how those are going to be functioning in HubSpot and that they will function correctly or if there's any changes that need to be made. So that is the, I guess, initial process for a migration. Those are the first 3 steps that you need to do before you start actually migrating anything. And now we can get into the fun stuff, and I will pass it over to Diana for our actual fun migration items that you came for.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Erica. So now that we've established the foundation, we've done the decision making, we've done, the cleanup, and we've mapped out the properties and the processes. Now we can start building out all of the assets in your new portal. Often we work with a lot of clients that aren't just migrating from one system to HubSpot, but they're actually migrating a lot of different systems into HubSpot because they might have a tech stack where they have one marketing provider, they have one sales provider, they have one ticketing provider. So we're working to migrate and consolidate all of those assets into one portal. So of course, here are the different buckets of what we normally are working with clients to migrate. So let's say you're migrating from a marketing provider like a Constant Contact, a MailChimp. So you're going to want to look into migrating over your email templates, your landing pages, any blogs, ad and social media account connections. If you have, let's say, a social media management tool like Hootsuite, any automation and any reporting as well. Next, let's say you're using another tech stack like Salesforce for your sales, then you're going to want to make sure you're migrating all of your sequences, all of the email templates that your sales reps are using, all of the documentation that might live in there, as well as the reporting. And then finally, if you have some kind of ticketing system, then if you have any customer surveys that you have going out, any ticketing pipelines, emails and notifications and automations, you want to make sure that all gets migrated over to HubSpot too. Now, this is a little bit of a manual process. It is going to involve you rebuilding them from scratch. There's no way to just transfer it over and automate it. So this is a good opportunity for you and your team to decide what is worth transferring over, what are you still using, and what is not worth transferring over. We can move on to the next step, which is your object transfer and import. So once all of your assets are built and the portal is almost ready, it's finally time to migrate all of your data. In HubSpot, the data is usually organized in what is called objects. So here on the screen, you can see what your major objects are in HubSpot. This includes contacts, companies, deals, or what's referred to as opportunities in a lot of other systems. If you have any custom objects, your activities, tasks, and notes, and it's not listed on here, but this could include deals as well. So this will be one of the most critical aspects of the migration, as you want to make sure that all of your data is migrating as expected. Traditionally, this is done by exporting all of your data from your previous system into an Excel or a CSV file, and then re-importing it through HubSpot, through the import tool, which is very easy and simple to use. If your data happens to be very complex, or it's coming from a system that has a native integration with HubSpot, it could be worth looking into an integration or API to migrate your data. You could also work with a HubSpot partner that specializes in migrations and integrations, such as Flawless. That would be ideal to help walk you through this kind of complex migration. And something else that we normally like to recommend as a best practice to many of our clients is to start with a small sample of data, import that into HubSpot, make sure it's looking like how you're expecting before you migrate a large amount of data, because it could be hard to keep track of how it's looking. Move on to the next step, which is training. So whenever you're migrating to a new system, your team is going to want to make sure that you're training. You're going to want to make sure you're training your entire team on how to use the new tools, where they can find their data, and how to perform their usual processes on the new platform. It might involve a few extra steps that they're not used to. Things might be called differently. So that could be confusing and frustrating to the team. if they go into their tool, the tool, and they're not used to, let's say, the interface or the nomenclature in the new system. Sometimes we work with clients that are migrating from one HubSpot portal to another HubSpot portal. Even in this situation, there could be changes to properties, to programming, to their processes that your team has to follow. So it's really important to make sure that they fully understand how to perform their day-to-day activities in the new systems. When it comes to training, we recommend splitting this into two major parts. So the first one would be training your portal admins. These would be the people who are managing your HubSpot portal from the technical perspective. They're the ones who understand the in and outs of how the portal is set up. They would be controlling things like users, teams, permissions, setting up properties, any other settings that have to do with the objects. For instance, when it comes to contacts and companies, there is a setting in HubSpot that allows the system to automatically create and associate companies. So they would be the ones who know the ins and outs of how those settings are set up. And then you would also want to split up any further training into the teams. So this should be specifically, let's say, the sales team or the marketing team, and showing them how to conduct their day-to-day workflows in HubSpot. So that's how we normally recommend that you train those teams, is walk them through the day in the life of how they would work through the current system. So this is one of the most critical parts, that is the change management. If this is not initiated early on, then when it comes to go live and launch, we usually see a lot of user resistance, which ultimately the migration could be a success, but if there's no user adoption or if there's resistance, then the entire project will seem like a failure. So this is very critical. And on here you can see our pro tip is to have an internal champion who is very familiar with the system, that can help push the internal team to use the HubSpot day in and day out.
Yeah, and this internal champion should be involved in the entire process. So find this person early on, involve them even in those early decisions where we were talking about stakeholders, use them as a stakeholder, have them involved in all the decisions and everything so that they can be able to promote it to the rest of the team that they work with every day.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now we are on the final and most exciting step, which is the go live. Usually people think this is a single day, but we usually see this as a week-long endeavor. So this is the time where you want to take all of the hard work that you've put into the migration and make it live in HubSpot, but there are still a few steps that you would want to do first before you make the successful transition. So the first thing you want to do, this is not in any particular order, but the first thing you want to do is to make sure that you re-import the data. So if people were still working in the old system between the last initial import and the go live, then you would want to do another import of data just to make sure that you capture any changes that have taken place since then. However, if only minimal work took place, then you might want to just consider manually updating the records in the new portal. The next step you'd want to do is the user's individual setup. So you want to make sure that every individual team member from your new portal, or that's going to be working in a new portal, goes up and sets up their individual profiles. So in HubSpot, this would include connecting their personal emails, especially when it comes to sales reps and customer service reps. This is very key so that they can log all of their activities, setting up their meeting links and any other individual settings they want to add. This would include things like notifications. And the reason why we recommend that you do this nearer to launch and not early on in the process is just to make sure that the users aren't changing information in the new system before you go live. The next really key part is to set a blackout date. So this is a period where the users cannot use the old system. This is just to make sure that when you do the final transfer, that there are no major changes that won't get captured. And during this blackout time, let's say there are some people who have to continue their activities like sales reps, we recommend keeping some notes or maybe an Excel file where they can record all of their activities. And then once they're in the new system, they can update it with any of those changes. So you also want to make sure that you set some blackout dates where people cannot make changes to the actual system. So they're not making any new pipelines, they're not changing any settings. That way you can make sure that the transfer is as clean and smooth as possible. And then, of course, the final step is to actually launch the new system. So you want to make sure that you're giving all users appropriate advance notice and be ready to provide support through the first few weeks, since people can, they can get confused, they can get overwhelmed when they're in the new system. And then, of course, when you do decide to do the blackout dates, you want to make sure that you communicate this early on, not only to your team, but let's say you have a ticketing system. You want to make sure that your customers also know that you're going to be having a blackout period, so that your team and your customers can plan accordingly. And these blackout dates, they can really vary from just a few hours in the morning, or it could last the entire day, but usually it wouldn't last more than something like a day. And yeah, that's the final step. So now, once you've completed your migration, you do have the options to do some bonus advanced steps. So I'll pass it back to Erica to cover what that can look like.
Yeah, so we work with a lot of companies who are a little bit more advanced in their migration than just simply taking all of their assets and their data and transferring that over. And so we see lots of more enterprise level companies who are doing a much more advanced migration. And in this case, we do recommend that you try to work with a HubSpot partner, HubSpot solutions partner who has experience and certification in migration and integration, like Flawless Inbound, self-plug. So we will be able to help you with doing these advanced steps and making sure that you can accurately set up all of that more enterprise level stuff that you need to in the new portal. But here's a few things that you might want to consider if your migration sounds a little bit more complex than everything that we've gone over so far. You're definitely not alone. So here are those considerations. The first one is integrations. A lot of people are not just migrating to HubSpot as a brand new system, they're adding HubSpot to their tech stack. So you will want to have a set of integrations. Maybe you are integrating to an ERP, maybe you are integrating to an e-commerce system, maybe you're integrating to a third-party marketing system if you're only using HubSpot for sales. Whatever the case is, you'll want to make sure that you have that integration as part of the migration, but integrations are a whole beast of their own. We actually do have a separate guide to integrations that we can send you for download to PDF, and we have done a webinar on that as well. So in the follow-up to this webinar, we'll be able to send you some information on downloading the integration-based webinars and guidebooks, but integrations require a whole nother skill set, and they require a whole nother sort of process to go through that you'll need to do alongside your migration process. So it's important that those are accurately planned as well. Second thing is advanced workflow automation. There's a lot of companies who have much more advanced automation in their systems, or they want to implement advanced automation outside of what's available just in lead nurturing. It's not just sending follow-up emails after a form submission. They are doing advanced lead routing. They're doing advanced sales tracking. They're doing some advanced calculations even in their automation. So you have to set up advanced workflow automation for your system. You're going to require some additional planning in the early stages of the migration, and you're going to want to probably implement a developer portal or get a test portal even in HubSpot, which is available for developers. And if you need help with understanding that, you can reach out and we can let you know. But there is an option for that. You can also work with a partner like Flawless, who can implement a sandbox system for you, where you can test things if you have really advanced automations that you don't want to accidentally mess something up in the live portal. This is not a always a default feature that you can access, so you can always work with a partner to have that set up for you as well. And then lastly, adding new tools. So this is maybe the least advanced of the advanced things, but HubSpot comes with so many tools and so many features that a lot of other CRMs or marketing automation platforms or sales platforms don't offer. So sometimes it's very, very tempting when you look at HubSpot to be like, oh, and while we migrate, let's add this and this and this and that. And while we usually say try to implement what you have and then add new tools, for some companies, the timing just works out best to add the new tools during migration. This requires additional mapping in the early stages to understand how your data and your processes are going to map into tools that you weren't using before or features that you weren't using before. And secondly, it definitely requires additional training for your team on how to use these new things and how to change their day-to-day process to fit these new tools in. For some teams, these new tools are only sort of reporting based and they're some advanced reporting tools. So requires additional input from executives or leadership to understand what they need to see in these reports and to help them get trained on how to analyze and understand the new reports when they see them. These are just a few examples of complexities that migrations can have. Things like custom objects, custom development of the CRM, like software programming, adding additional APIs, things like that are all still advanced migrations. And we're very much happy to speak with you about that if you need more information on how to do those things. But we will send some information on integrations as well. And while I'm here, before I get to the final slide, I do just want to say that in the final slide, I will have a QR code for you to access a special set of import templates. So for our Sales Navigator question earlier, if you are preparing for a migration and you're going to do it by export into Excel CSV and then re-import into HubSpot, we have prepared a bunch of templates that you can download with some very detailed instructions, some recommended properties that we would like you to, that we would recommend that you use in your migration, and instructions for customizing those templates and for using them. So we've taken a standard Excel sheet and just preset it up as a template for you to migrate all of your data into HubSpot. So we will have the code and the link for you to access that as well at the end. But I just wanted to call that out before we jump into some questions in case anyone was wondering what we can do to help out with the offer. So after this presentation, we will send you the guide to integrations if you're going to be using that as well, and all the link to access all of our templates. That includes the contacts and companies import template, a deal import template for our Sales Hub users, and then a activities, notes, tasks import template for those people who are moving their team into HubSpot. All right, so I'm going to open it up to questions now that we have a few minutes left. If you want to drop your questions right into the Q&A, please do so. If you have additional questions, I know sort of answered the LinkedIn Sales Navigator question from someone, so I will just expand on that a little bit. So we had someone asking how do they import their data from Sales Navigator. This is not necessarily a migration, but more of just a regular import. There is an integration between HubSpot and LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So you are able to set up that integration if you have an existing portal, and then you don't have to do an export import. So you're just able to turn on that native integration. You'll have to play with the settings a little bit, but then you should be able to just pull the data directly across. But if you are wanting to export it into CSV, do any cleaning of it, and then import, you'll want to get an export out of Sales Navigator into a Excel sheet or a CSV. And then you want to take one of the templates, either anything that you already have, or you can download the ones that we're going to offer here. And you would just try to format the data into that particular CSV, which would include if you're importing a prospect list, those would be contacts. You need to have an email address. Email address is HubSpot's unique identifier. So all contacts need to be imported with email addresses. If you do not want to risk having all kinds of duplicates, HubSpot only identifies duplicates and only stops the import of duplicates via email address for contacts. So you need to make sure you have email address included in your import files, whether that's from Sales Navigator or Zoom Info or wherever you're getting your data from. Without email address, you are just risking a whole bunch of very messy data, and you might want to think of another sort of tracking system for your leads if you don't have email address. But definitely include that, and then include any other fields that you find necessary for your business process. That could include the industry, that could include the company name, all of those things. Again, if you want to avoid duplicates from a company level, you're going to want to include the company domain. So that's just the piece at the end of the email address. For us, that would be flawlessinbound.ca. For many people, it is the exact same as their website. Sometimes it's a little bit different, but you want to include that company domain to make sure that you're accurately tracking the companies. And then you'll follow the import steps in HubSpot. This is pretty straightforward. They have a pretty clear guide to how to do the import. So you just want to go into your contacts, or if there's a prospect list, it'll be contacts, database. At the very top right-hand side of HubSpot, you will see a button that just says import. Once you click on that button, the instructions should be fairly clear. It will tell you when to upload your sheet. It will help you make sure that all of your data is accurate in terms of property mapping. So it'll allow you to map what fields from the sheet you're going to import into what fields in HubSpot. It'll tell you if there are errors in your data. It'll tell you if there's anything that it can't map or anything that's not accurate. And you just follow that process, and it is pretty straightforward. But absolutely, if you are in need of any help with learning to do imports, any support like that, we are available to help provide that as well. And we can definitely help you get up to speed on that. We have a few special beta offers going on right now where we do have some self-serve onboarding information, as well as some help desk portals that are in beta. So we're just giving access to some specific customers who are able to provide us with feedback for our new portal. But right now it is in beta, but if you are interested, we can send more information. So just reach out and let us know. We can definitely send more information about our beta for our help desk, as well as for our self-serve onboarding portal, which will allow you to sort of go through a HubSpot onboarding without the help of a partner. We do recommend this for companies with pretty straightforward, pretty basic onboardings right now. But if you are interested, please reach out and let us know. I don't see any additional questions added into the chat right now. So I'm gonna have a look at if we've had anything submitted prior. Yeah, a question we often get with imports is, will I be able to import all of my data from things like tasks or notes and things like that go along with my deals or my contacts if I'm in marketing? So there are quite a few CRM systems where you can't import things like call records or email records and things like that. But thankfully, HubSpot does offer the ability to do those additional imports where you can import all of the data in your like call records, how many successful calls were there, how many times was this prospect called, all of that can be imported as well. So you are able to import that into HubSpot. A few things that you would need to do manually would be you'd need to manually reattach documents to your prospects. So if you have an attachment onto a prospect record, you will probably need to move that manually. However, again, if you have a ton of those and you need advanced API work to help migrate those, definitely speak to a partner with an integration or API software development specialty so that you can get some help in doing that. And then another question that we often get at the end of a migration is, what do I do after I finish the migration? So what happens when the migration is done? Now I have my new system. Now my team's using it. The next steps following migration is just to optimize. So get your data. How are things working? This is why we wanted to make sure we had reporting and analytics at the beginning on what makes a successful migration. And then secondly, what allows customers to feel like they're having a better experience with your team now that you have the new system. So whatever you're tracking for that, whatever that means to you, maybe it's more conversions, maybe it's faster customer service responses, maybe it's a more streamlined sales process, and even sometimes it's just better tracking, better data availability for leadership teams to understand how the sales team is doing. Whatever the case is, have a look at that data and see where improvements can be made. Is there anything that you were expecting to improve greatly and hasn't? Is there anything that has improved drastically beyond what you originally suspected? Take all of that information and then decide, what else can I do? So how else can I optimize the system to add more features, add more tools, add more efficiency for my team, everything like that, and make sure that you have anything that you need for your team in a order that they're able to just their jobs better. Yeah, Diana, I think you have.
Yeah, I just want a final comment before we wrap things up. Something that's really that we've worked with a lot of clients was, like I said before, when I was speaking during the presentation, is to consolidate a lot of different tools into one. So that's really a big benefit of a HubSpot migration, is that you can consolidate your marketing, sales, ticketing tools all in one. And you can even see in a better light the ROI on things like from marketing to sales and how your marketing leads are converting into deals and into revenue. And it really just revs up that RevOps engine, so you can attract new customers and then keep them coming back for more.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We are very happy to have brought you the guide to HubSpot migrations, and hopefully you're able to take some valuable information from this. Thank you again. We are Flawless Inbound. You can find us at flawlessinbound.ca if you have any questions or you would like to look at what we have. And we will send the recording and all of the offers that we spoke about today in a follow-up email by tomorrow morning.